Hey there, everyone. Ready to dive into something we all could use a bit more of?
I'm game. What are we tackling today?
Morning routines.
Oh, I love a good morning routine. What specifically are we looking at?
How to make them work for you, not just the cookie cutter stuff. We're getting personalized today.
Sounds good to me. Where are we getting all this wisdom from?
We're dissecting a podcast episode today from a show called Success Simplified.
Ooh, getting right to the point.
The episode is called The Role of Morning Routines in Personal Success.
Catchy. Let's see if they live up to the name. What's the main takeaway?
They start off strong, saying that mornings are key for setting the tone for your whole day.
Makes sense. Why is that?
They argue it's because you can find that mental clarity and build some momentum before things get crazy.
It's a compelling idea. And there is some science to back it up, too.
Like what?
Have you ever heard of cognitive priming?
Not ringing a bell.
It's this fascinating concept where what you do first thing literally primes your brain for what comes next.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So does that mean scrolling through social media first thing is like setting my brain up for a day of distractions?
Well, it's not quite that simple. It's more about giving your brain the right cues.
Okay, I'm listening.
Let's say, for example, you start your day with a quick meditation session. You're essentially telling your brain, hey, we're going to be focused and calm today.
Interesting. So it's less about what you do and more about the overall tone you set.
Exactly. Speaking of setting the tone, the podcast also talks about decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue. I think I know that one.
Yeah. You know that feeling of being mentally drained after making too many choices?
Yes. Tell me about it.
Well, it turns out our willpower is actually at its strongest in the morning.
So the idea is that a solid morning routine kind of takes those early decisions off the table,
Right.
saving your mental energy for later.
Exactly. Think about all those little choices we make first thing in the morning. What to wear, what to eat, what to check first on our phones.
So many choices.
Right. A routine minimizes those choices, freeing up your mental bandwidth for the important stuff.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Now, this brings us to another concept they highlighted. You ready for this?
Hit me with it.
Habit stacking. They gave this great example of drinking water while you're brewing coffee.
I like where this is going. Can you explain that a bit more?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Habit stacking is basically attaching a new habit to an existing one.
I see.
So in that example, you're leveraging the already ingrained habit of making coffee to help you build the new habit of drinking water first thing.
Sneaking it in. It's like sneaking in a good habit on the coattails of an old one.
Pretty clever, right?
Yeah.
The podcast then breaks down what they see as the essential elements of a really powerful morning routine. Mindfulness, physical movement, nutrition, goal setting, even making time for learning.
They do go into a lot of detail about each of those elements too.
Oh, yeah.
With specific examples like journaling for mindfulness, a quick walk, or yoga for movement. They even gave a healthy smoothie recipe.
Interesting. But before we dive into their examples, what stands out to you about those 5 elements?
Honestly, I've always struggled with the mindfulness part.
Yeah, I get that.
Like, I get the concept, but fitting it into a busy morning is tough. I'm more of a grab-and-go kind of person.
I hear you. That's a great point, though. The key really is to personalize your routine.
Makes sense.
What works for one person won't necessarily work for another, you know?
For sure.
Maybe mindfulness for you looks like a quiet 5 minutes with a cup of tea instead of formal meditation.
I like that idea. It's about finding what works for you, not trying to, force yourself into someone else's mold.
Exactly. And speaking of different approaches,
Yeah.
the podcast features some pretty impressive examples of morning routines from really successful people.
Oh, cool. Like who?
Like Oprah Winfrey, Tim Cook, Robin Sharma.
Okay, wait. Before we jump into their routines, I'm curious. Why do you think it's so important to look at what successful people do? Isn't that a bit like comparing apples and oranges?
That's a fair question. I think it's less about copying their exact routines and more about understanding the principles behind them.
Okay, yeah. I see what you mean.
These are people who are, incredibly busy, yet they still prioritize their mornings.
That's a good point.
It highlights just how valuable those hours can be, you know?
Yeah. It's easy to dismiss morning routines as, something only people with tons of free time can do.
Right. But seeing how successful people structure their mornings, even if it's just a few key elements, can be inspiring and give us ideas for our own lives.
Okay, you've sold me. So what does Oprah do?
Oprah?
Yeah. I've always admired her calm and focused energy.
Well, she reportedly starts her day with meditation and some form of exercise.
No surprise there.
Then she has a healthy breakfast and sets aside some time for quiet reflection before she dives into her work.
I love that she prioritizes that quiet time. It seems like a key ingredient for her centeredness.
It's a great reminder that even in a really hectic world, just carving out space for stillness can be incredibly powerful.
I totally agree. So who's next?
Well, now on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple.
Oh, yeah. Tim Cook. I remember reading that he's up at some ungodly hour.
You're telling me. He reportedly wakes up at 4:30 a.m. to check emails and hit the gym.
Wow. 4:30.
Yeah.
I guess that's the price you pay for running one of the biggest companies in the world.
It's definitely a testament to his discipline and dedication. But it also brings up an interesting point about personalization.
How so?
What works for Tim Cook might not work for someone else.
Totally. I am not a 4:30 a.m. kind of person.
Right, and that's okay.
But maybe there are other aspects of his routine that could be helpful, like that focus on fitness.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got calm and centered Oprah and super disciplined Tim Cook. Who else is on the list?
And speaking of fitness, the podcast also highlights Robin Sharma, author of The 5 a.m. Club.
The 5 a.m. Club. Oh, my goodness.
He swears by his 20-20-20 rule.
What's that?
He dedicates the first hour of his day to 20 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of reflection, and 20 minutes of learning.
Oh, no, that's a routine I could actually get behind.
Yeah.
It's structured, but also allows for flexibility within those time blocks.
It's a great example of how you can tailor your routine to fit your specific goals and interests.
Okay, so we've looked at these really inspiring examples, but how do we actually go about creating our own morning routine? Where do we even start?
Well, the podcast offers a really practical step-by-step guide, and it starts with identifying your goals.
Okay, goals. That makes sense.
What do you want to get out of your mornings? More energy, increased productivity, a sense of calm.
That's a good point. If you don't even know what you're aiming for, it's easy to just drift through your mornings.
Exactly. And then comes the perhaps less exciting, but very important part, starting small.
Starting small. I can see how that would be key. Trying to overhaul your entire morning routine overnight seems like a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. It's much more sustainable to start with one or two small changes and gradually build from there.
Like maybe swapping out that morning scroll through social media for 5 minutes of journaling.
Exactly. Or adding a 10-minute walk to your routine. It's about making those small, incremental changes that eventually become ingrained habits.
Okay, so starting small, picking one or two changes. Got it.
And once you have those new habits in place, it's all about consistency, right? The podcast talks about the importance of setting a consistent wake-up time.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that one before. Does it really make a difference?
It can. Having a regular sleep-wake cycle actually helps regulate your body's natural rhythms, leading to better sleep quality and more energy throughout the day.
So even if you're not a morning person, sticking to a consistent wake-up time can actually make a big difference.
It can. And to make those mornings even smoother, the podcast also recommends preparing the night before.
Oh, that's a good one. Like what kinds of things?
It could be anything, like laying out your workout clothes, packing your lunch, or even just setting out your coffee mug.
I like it.
It's about removing any potential obstacles that might tempt you to hit that snooze button.
Ugh, that snooze button. It's my worst enemy.
Hmm.
Okay, so consistent wake-up time, prepping the night before. What else?
And I guess the final piece of advice is to be flexible. Life happens.
Oh, for sure. So true.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
If you miss a day or two, don't beat yourself up about it. Just get back on track as soon as you can.
That's good advice for everything in life, really.
It really is.
Okay, so they've got a good guide for making a routine and a great mindset for sticking to it. What else do they cover?
Well, the podcast also acknowledges that people often face challenges when they're trying to establish a morning routine.
Makes sense. It can't all be smooth sailing.
Right. And one common one is the classic "I'm not a morning person" excuse.
Oh, I've definitely used that one before.
Yeah, but they have a clever solution for that. They suggest starting small, even if it's just waking up 10 minutes earlier than usual. Baby steps.
That's manageable.
Right. And for those who claim they don't have time for a morning routine,
Yeah, I hear that one a lot too.
they counter that argument by saying even a focused 15 to 30 minutes can be impactful.
It's all about quality over quantity, right?
Right. Even a short, intentional routine is better than no routine at all.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the people who struggle with consistency? That's always been my biggest challenge.
Oh, I can relate to that. The podcast suggests using what they call triggers to help you stay on track.
Triggers, what do they mean by that?
It could be something really simple like setting an alarm, placing a visual cue, like a sticky note on your mirror, or even associating your new habit with an existing part of your routine.
Oh, I see. So it's like a little reminder to nudge you in the right direction.
Exactly. It's about giving your willpower a little boost.
I like it. I might need to try that. They've got a solution for everything.
Right. It seems like this podcast really has thought of everything. They've presented a pretty compelling case for the power of morning routines.
Totally agree. And they leave us with a challenge, which I think is a great way to wrap up our deep dive into this topic. They encourage listeners to implement one small change to their morning routine this week and observe the effects.
One small change. That's doable. What do you think? Would you be up for the challenge?
Absolutely. I'm always up for a little self-improvement experiment. And who knows? Maybe this will be the key to unlocking a more productive and fulfilling day.
I think it's definitely worth a try.
Totally.
But before we go, I want to circle back to something that really resonated with me from the podcast. They talked about the connection between morning routines and long-term goals.
Oh, right. I think I remember that part.
They said your morning routine shouldn't just exist in isolation. It should be aligned with your bigger aspirations.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it makes total sense when you put it that way.
So instead of viewing a morning routine as just a series of tasks, it can be a way to actively work towards your dreams.
Exactly. Like, if your goal is to write a book, maybe you incorporate 30 minutes of writing into your morning routine.
Oh, I like that.
Or if you're trying to learn a new language, you could spend some time practicing vocabulary or listening to a podcast.
It's almost like embedding your goals into the very fabric of your day, starting first thing in the morning.
I like that. It's about making those aspirations tangible and actionable rather than just like something you hope to get to someday.
That's a powerful shift in perspective. You know, what's really resonating with me from this whole deep dive is that even small adjustments can have a ripple effect.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not about becoming a completely different person overnight. It's about those subtle but consistent shifts that can lead to real change.
It's so easy to get caught up in the idea that we need to make these grand, sweeping changes to see results. But often it's the small, seemingly insignificant actions repeated day after day that have the most profound impact. Like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. And in this case, that first step could be as simple as setting your alarm 15 minutes earlier.
Totally.
Or swapping out your usual sugary breakfast for a healthier option.
Small changes, big impact. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, I think we've thoroughly explored the world of morning routines in this deep dive.
I think so too.
It's been fascinating to unpack the science, the psychology, and even the practical strategies for creating a routine that works for you.
It really has. And I hope it's given you, our listener, some food for thought, and perhaps even inspired you to experiment with your own morning routine.
Yeah, me too.
Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what energizes you, what sets you up for success, and what helps you feel your best.
So as we wrap up, we'd like to leave you with this final thought.
Okay, shoot.
What small change can you make to your morning routine this week?
I love that.
Even something as simple as drinking a glass of water before that first cup of coffee can make a difference.
It can. Embrace the power of those early hours. And see how even subtle shifts can create a ripple effect throughout your entire day.
Yes. And remember, even if you stumble, just get back on track.
Right.
It's about progress, not perfection.
So until next time, here's to intentional mornings and fulfilling days.
Cheers to that.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
It really is all about progress, not perfection. You got this.
So true. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating world of morning routines.
Yeah, I think we covered it all.
We unpacked the science, the psychology, even got some practical strategies for creating a routine that actually works for real people.
And hopefully busted some myths along the way.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be a morning person to benefit from a morning routine.
Nope.
You don't need hours of free time either.
Exactly.
It's all about finding what works for you, your goals, your schedule, your personality.
And being kind to yourself when you inevitably stumble.
So important. Well, before we sign off, any final words of wisdom for our listeners out there who are ready to revamp their mornings?
Just one. Remember that one small change we challenged you with earlier?
Drinking a glass of water before coffee.
That's the one. It could be anything, really, as long as it moves you closer to your goals. Try it out this week.
See what happens.
And pay attention to how it makes you feel.
Maybe it'll boost your energy.
Increase your focus.
Or just give you a sense of calm and control to start your day.
You never know until you try.
So, until next time.
Happy experimenting.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.